Hello, loves. How are you? I am back for another solo episode of Thriving Together. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And this is a really special episode for a bunch of different reasons. One, because I think it's going to be my last solo episode of the year, which is so wild. I'm recording this in November, a few weeks before. And yeah, so far it does not feel like the end of the year at all. So I don't know how it's going to feel once we're finally there. But it's it's been a really wild year and a really challenging year for a lot of people. There's also been a lot of growth. And yeah, I don't really know. In some ways, I'm really ready to let 2023 go. And I feel like it's time. And, there's been like a lot of lessons, which we're going to get into in this episode this week. But then in other ways, I feel like there's still so much that I wish would have happened or would have changed. There's still so much suffering happening in the world. And I think I want to start a year with this like bright, bushy tailed positivity and feeling of, anything's possible and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it just doesn't feel as attainable in a year when there has been so many challenges for people. So I just want to name that. And yeah, and then the other thing about this episode that is sort of unique and different is that it is my first episode of the podcast that I'm actually trying out recording it. And I mean, not recording it, obviously, they're all recorded, but recording a video with it. I remember the first time I recorded this podcast. I can't remember if it was the very, very first episode or one of the first for sure in the very beginning. And I was in my brother's apartment actually in when he used to live in the West Village for a while. And I was coming into New York to visit because I had been living with my parents. Oh my God, this feels like a lifetime ago, but it was literally last year. But I was living with my parents because I was going through a lot with my health. And I had just gotten well enough to be able to like come and visit in the city. And my brother had an apartment in the West Village and he was out of town this one weekend. And so I decided to stay there. And it was great. But I remember recording a video to the podcast. And I'm not going to lie, it was so hard for me to see myself on camera at the time. My face had become almost like a bit distorted with the amount that it changed from moon face from the steroid treatment that I had to be on last year and I'm still slowly tapering off of. And yeah, it was a really, really challenging experience. So I was like, I don't wanna, no, no. I do not want to be on camera. And I want this to be about like the message and I don't want to have to be on all the time and like all that kind of stuff. So some of that is still true. I still look different than I did before I started my treatment. I still am going through a lot of physical things. And I also don't want to have to be on. Like, I'm literally wearing leggings right now and I have like very little to no makeup on. So, this is probably what you're going to get a lot of the time. And I think that that just has got to be okay. But I also am going through some interesting changes and starting to like allow myself to lean into other parts of my creativity, other parts of my self expression, things like that. So, we're going to get into some of that in this episode, but having the camera on, having the video recorded is kind of a part of that. And I'm going to play around with it. Again, this is like the only episode in this season that I've recorded on video. So we're going to see if it works, if people like it. I might add this to my YouTube channel, which I haven't recorded or uploaded a video to, except for like a media reel. I did, I think, earlier this year or last year. I haven't uploaded anything, any like real content to that page in literally years. But I don't know. Maybe there's something emerging. Maybe it's time. So, um, that's a couple reasons why this is a little different. And right now, we're in December and we're heading into the end of the year, last few weeks of the year. A lot of people are going to be really winding down, really some people are going to be in a pretty reflective space, and I think that's where I tend to go. I mean, truthfully, I'm like always in a bit of a reflective space, but I think I tend to go even more into like an introverted reflective space towards the end of the year, beginning of the new year. And yeah, I guess I want to invite you to like be on that journey with me if that's something that resonates with you too. So I've always found, for many, many years, I found that like the end of the year or like New Year's was always a time when people seem to feel or think or like portray that we had to be super extroverted. We have to be like super busy and go to a big New Year's Eve thing and do something really major and epic and Instagram worthy. And I think for a very long time, I've actually just owned that I'm not a huge like celebration party person in general, but I think New Year's was sort of my first, quote unquote holiday that I realized that about pretty early on. I remember I was dating this guy when I was like 29, 30, and I remember the first year we were dating, we went out to a whole New Year's Eve thing, and it was like we got dressed up and we went to like the Waverly Inn in the West Village, which was like the it thing then. And we went to, I think, Gold Bar and all these places that were like really popular back in that time in New York. And then by the second year, I was like, can we just like bake gluten-free cookies and watch a movie and like talk about our dreams? And that was really what I wanted to do. Now, mind you, I'd love to do that as I've gotten older. I realized like I'd love to do that with, like on a beach somewhere or like maybe on a nice trip. I think that would feel really cool. But for the most part, I'm not an extrovert. So I think, the thought of doing these more extroverted celebrations just kind of feels like it's something that you're supposed to do versus something that I actually want to do. So that is kind of where I've been at with New Year's and a lot of the holidays. So yeah, I go into this inward place and I am reflecting on this year, the past several months of this year. And the theme for Chronicon's community this month is acceptance and surrender. And it has me thinking about so many things. I think the thing that comes up first for me, and I'd love for you all to start thinking about like, what is it that you want to have acceptance and surrender around? And that doesn't mean that like you have to be in a place of acceptance and surrender around something, but I would just love to see like what are those things that you're even thinking about. And we always have a post in the community, so definitely share it with me over there if you're a member. And then yeah, if you're not, you can always DM me. But yeah, I think for acceptance and surrender, the first thing that comes up for me, honestly, is a lot of relationships. Like I have had to accept and surrender like it is my actual child when it comes to relationships. I'm not in a romantic relationship. I haven't been in one in a while. But and even that is something I've had to really accept and surrender around. It definitely came up a bit more in like the last quarter of this year of feeling like, okay, I kind of see some of the things that might be holding me back from fully going for it with a romantic relationship. And I want to get my nervous system to a place where I can actually feel safe inviting that into my life. But before that, even, I've been thinking a lot about friendships. And I have to say, I feel like I've talked about friendships a lot, definitely in the community for sure. But, even on this podcast, I think I've talked about it quite a bit. And friendships have always been challenging for me. I I think for whatever reason, and I think a lot of it did have to do with my health for a long time. I think I was more on the like more needy side for a long time. I think I lacked a lot of self-confidence growing up, which of course attributed to the neediness, but then also just attributed to like me not being the best version of myself because I'm operating from this place of I want you to like me because I don't really believe that I'm worthy of that versus just like operating as myself and fully being who I am and knowing that I'm lovable and likable and not everyone's going to think I'm the coolest person, but like I'll be perfect for some people. And that's what matters. And that's what I can follow and trust. But I haven't always, I have mostly have not felt that way. Right. So if that's the case, then yeah, I've created some really just toxic, tumultuous, unhealthy, just really relationships that are not honestly, like one of my really good friends who's become like a very, very close friend of mine over the years, she said to me, she's like, it's almost like as you've been navigating all these different relationships, it almost seems like I used to let myself become friends with people who were almost like kind of mean to me. And I don't even mean that in a way that's like that they are mean people or that it's all on them. To be honest with you, I think one of the biggest things I've realized in this last few months of the year is that like I put myself in situations where I was not showing up as the best version of me. And then that like only perpetuates the other person also like reacting to that, not showing up as the best version of them. Like there might be someone else out there for that exact person who I feel like is being kind of horrible to me or kind of shitty or whatever. There might be someone else out there that is the perfect person for them. And to that person, they never act that way. And they never, give them backhanded compliments or they never, are manipulative with them or are, so ego focused or whatever the things are that were coming up for me. And so I think that's actually been honestly like kind of liberating in a lot of ways because I think one of the things that used to happen for me a lot was I would ruminate about these situations constantly. And it took up a lot of my time and even more of my energy, And so, and honestly, like ruminating doesn't get you anywhere either. It's, what one of my mentors calls is like just like recycling pain. And I used to do that so, so, so much. And so I've just really thought about all these different things and really like sat with them and been sort of trying to be mindful to not just go into this place of, oh my God, she was so XYZ. She was so this. Can you even believe that she did this to me? Like all of that stuff. I mean, I'm human. I definitely have done that many times. And I've definitely said those things many times. And I think the reason why I've been so committed to watching that and to not doing that as much is because I'm like, okay, what is that getting me? It's actually getting me this like false sense of I've got it figured out and she doesn't or whatever, like something to that effect, right? This false sense of yeah, just like feeling like there's nothing on my side of the street to look at, which I think is hilarious saying that out loud, but it's sort of true. And so I think that's just like never been my intention is to like not look at myself. I've always wanted to look at myself and like make sure that I'm in integrity and like what can I do better. And so I noticed that yeah, there's this thing that happens when I start to go into this place of like just pointing the finger at the other person constantly and then ruminating about how horrible they were to me, which maybe they were horrible to me, but I can just like choose to do something different. I can also choose to step away. And I'm also just really learning, as I said, that like there's always a part that I am learning that I have to play in it too. So, that was sort of a long story of what I've been learning, but I think it's important because yeah, a lot of this year has been about my relationships and my friendships. And I don't know, I mean, let me not jinx myself, But I do hope and I do feel a lot more like I'm in this place of, yeah, just like really feeling like what is it? I'm in this place of really feeling like I am showing up as a fuller version of myself and a more empowered version of myself, a more clear version of myself. And so, if that's the case, then I'm hopeful. And I'm also seeing as time has gone on over the last like several months, especially, that my relationships have become more enriching. My relationships have become more meaningful. Um, and yeah, and I'm hoping that that leads to more and more connections that feel like the handful of friendships that I'm kind of left with after I sort of let go and accepted that a bunch of people are just not the friends that I need to be spending time with. I think that there, yeah, has just been this feeling of like, okay, there's richness and like a true beautiful quality to the friendships that I do have. And these actually do represent the types of relationships that I do want. So, okay, maybe there's only like 5 of them left, and I used to have like 25 of them. But the truth is that those other 20 relationships were not really it. And I used to get hurt a lot through those relationships. So, that's been like one of the biggest things that I've been reflecting on at the end of this year. And when I think of acceptance and surrender, I've had to really, really go into that with relationships. And then in terms of even like romantic relationships, what I was saying before, I think I have sort of gotten to a place where I'm like, okay, you know what? I see that there are some blocks to me allowing a partner into my life. It's really hard for me to talk about, and I don't plan on talking a lot about it, but it is something that I'm actively working on. And like with the people in my life that I work on my life with, especially like with my nervous system work that I've been doing, for example. There's just like all kinds of things sort of intertwined into that. And there are reasons why I'm nervous to let someone close to me. There are reasons why I have some programming around, things not working out. There are just so many nuances to that part of my life. And, I think like getting married to who I thought was the love of my life at the age of 24 and having this beautiful, like 3-week long wedding, with like 700 people in the middle of New Delhi and fully going into that experience with like the purity of that age too, right? Like I was only 20 when I got married and that was the first person I'd ever been in love with. And I really believed that we were going to be together forever. Like I really, really, really believed that. And I've just never met anyone that like had me even want to believe that about them since then. So, there's some unpacking to do, but I think the acceptance and surrender part is just like being able to see those different aspects of myself and just being like, okay, like I see you. I see some of the blocks. I see the hesitation. I see the different nuances around the pain and the broken trust and the betrayal and all these different things. And I don't need it to like own me and I don't need to live and move forward from that place. But I also don't need to like bulldoze myself into being in a different place. So I think that's sort of where I am in that area of my life. And in other areas of acceptance and surrender, I think, there's like a lot of stuff that's really positive. Like even with Chronicon, I'm like thinking, do I tell you this big thing that I've been working on? I think I might. I think I might tell you. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to tell you. And I usually tell the Chronicon community everything first, but I know a lot of you who are listening are from the community. So I look forward to hearing, unless I've already told you by the time this podcast comes out, who knows. But the big thing that I've been sort of working through behind the scenes, you all who are just like following us online or stuff like that, you don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes, but there's always so much that I'm trying to, I guess, like live up to with this mission and the level at which I believe this population of chronically ill and disabled folks like deserves love and celebration and care. I'm always trying to push myself to see like what else could I possibly do? Where else could I possibly grow and bring more awareness or more celebration or whatever that might be. And so recently, I have really thought about doing a couple of things. One thing is, one of the things I've dreamt about since starting Chronicon is starting the Chronicon Foundation. That has been a huge, huge dream of mine, mainly because I see, the opportunity to start the Chronicon Foundation as like a chance for us to then also fund programs for more people who deserve scholarships, more people who, can't afford to attend our conference. We could also host more events and have them totally funded by like a nonprofit arm, which I think would be really helpful just to like grow the organization, because I've been sort of trying to like reinvent the wheel, right? Like historically, organizations like ours are nonprofits, right? And are more like foundations. And I think that is incredibly important work. But I've also always said, okay, but like we aren't a charity. I don't want you to think of us as like, there's like the stigma around charities. It's not actually accurate, but there is like, oh, they're just a charity or something like that. Or it's like a handout or something. And I know that isn't true for every single experience in charities and nonprofits, but I have definitely sensed that and felt that, especially behind the scenes and conversations and like with, investors or founders and in that whole world. So I had always been like, okay, I'll do that much later after I've like cracked the code on, making our for profit all that it's meant to be for the greater good of this population. And, we're still going to operate as a for profit, but I'm now deep, deep, deep. By the time I've already been deep in this, but by the time the episode comes out, hopefully the paperwork would have been filed. But I'm pretty deep in figuring out, how do I create a nonprofit arm that funds a lot of the programming and actually allows us to scale and grow, but that still leads with this for-profit part where we are actually like totally revolutionizing the industry of what it means to be chronically ill and like the conversations around it and all the things that I talk about all the time. So these are some things that I'm thinking about. Yeah, and we're starting the Chronicon Foundation, which actually is really like wonderful. And I'm really honestly very excited about that. And I'm nervous. I was talking to one of my coaches earlier today, and yeah, she was like, what are you nervous about? And I think there is this, I'm sort of pushing myself, and through mentors and advisors and coaches, like being pushed. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, yeah, being pushed and like asked to stretch bigger than I necessarily thought I was ready for. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? It's like there's a level of confidence that you have to be like, no, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one to create this program. I'm going to be the one to create this offering. I'm going to be the one to go ask that person out. I'm going to be the one to whatever it is for you, right? And yeah, sometimes people think, maybe I have a ton of self-confidence and I'm always putting stuff out there, but I think that it's been very calculated the way that I do things, and it's been very measured and really only been as I am totally completely ready to do something, then I'm like, okay, fine, I think I can do this now. So I'm not really used to being pushed or encouraged to do things before I'm like 1,000,000,000% ready. So, yeah, those are some of the things that are coming up for me. And I think, alongside that, and this is like way not fleshed out, but I think alongside that, there's like a lot of my own creative energy that I've been feeling I want to get back to and explore, almost like the way I did when I had my company, Bella Life, which was years ago. It was my first company. I started in 2009. And I don't know how many of you know this story. Maybe all of you do because I've already told it. I don't know. But back in 2009, I started Bella Life. And yeah, I had like over 100 contributors writing for me. We would put out content every single day. And it was all stuff around like lifestyle, wellness, self love, beauty. And for me, it was always like connected to my story. So, like, my health was always a part of that. But my health was not at the forefront of everything that I was doing. And so, my focus is going to be Chronicon, for the foreseeable future and forever. Like, I want Chronicon to be around forever. But I also personally am looking at, like, even with this podcast, like, how can I switch it up a little bit? How can I share more parts of myself? How can I create in different ways that I haven't necessarily before? And just like looking at all those different things. So I am nervous, but also excited. And I think, getting back to acceptance and surrender, I think I'm sort of accepting in this moment that everything I've done up until this point has been exactly what I was meant to do, and how I've done it is exactly how I've been meant to do it. But there's something new emerging, and oh boy, is it uncomfortable to not know exactly what that is and how it's meant to be, and all that kind of stuff. Yes, it is very uncomfortable. Um but I'm really grateful that I have like a good team to support it and to remind me that I don't have to figure it out today. And I'm also really grateful that we still have this beautiful, growing community, and I'm hoping that it'll continue to grow as time goes on. And yeah, and like I get so much value out of being in that community and in Chronicon. So much value. I get fed on such a spiritual and soul and heart level, honestly, every single day. Even the days when it's not obvious that I've even been in there, because I've been like trying to be better about not working all the time. I still go in every day, absolutely, whether you see me in there or not. And I still check on everyone, and I'm still like reading the things and see who's working on stuff, who's commenting. And it fills me up because I see someone from anywhere in the world who's commenting on our feed saying they're going through this thing, or, they were wondering about this, or they're looking for so and so resource, or they found this really cool thing that they wanted to share, or whatever it is. And it's like we're making people's lives better just by connecting them with each other in this really specific and beautiful way. And I'm so proud of that. Like, I will forever be proud of that. And so, yeah, so that's really fueling me. And I'm really, really honored to be going into this next year, knowing that we've increased the amount of lives that we've been able to touch this year. And we still have so much more that I want us to do, and so many more lives that I hope we will touch. But it's been just like the honor of a lifetime to be on this journey with all of you. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. And I guess actually before I totally wrap up, my last thing that I'm like reflecting on is my health. And the podcast is called Thriving Together, and I think there's so many aspects of thriving that are important to me and that I'm focusing on. But yeah, I think last year in 2022, I mean, it's kind of a miracle that I thought of the title Thriving Together because I was not thriving. I was barely surviving, but it's sort of been a journey into figuring out what does thriving really mean to me. And I'm so proud of where things have gone through the journey of trying to figure out what it means for me to like thrive in my life and not just make it by and not just like chug along and survive. I know I've talked about it a lot, but my nervous system work has been hugely life changing. It's been a huge investment, not so much in the financial investment piece, but um, in my time. It's been a lot of time. I mean, there are times when the nervous system work that we're doing that week, like, will just exhaust me and take me out, and I just like can't do as much work, or I'm really like excavating into the deep dark corners of my entire soul and body. And yeah, it's a very, very big time and energy investment and like investment into myself. But I think, even 3 years from now, looking back at this time that I've spent diligently for over a year now, like working with my nervous system coach, Amy, twice a week, I think I'll be really grateful that I did it because I think it is setting me up for something like a much more sustainable, vibrant life. Um, so yeah, so those are kind of those updates, and I'm really grateful to be more on the other side of my health journey than I honestly ever thought I would be. And hopefully by the end of this year, I timed it out. If all goes well, I should be able to go down to 0 milligrams of my steroids on December 31st, which is a Sunday, if all goes well. So, yeah, thank you all for being on the journey with me. Thank you for loving me through it. Thank you for showing up for the show every week. Um, Thank you for your ratings and your reviews and your shares. It's just I consider it like a miracle of my life that all of you are with me, truly. And I love you. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of Thriving Together.